After surgery, I waited for my son, Nate. Instead, his wife Chloe texted, "We can't keep dropping everything for you. Call an Uber." My heart sank, but I stayed quiet. Then, a different car arrived, and the man inside revealed decades of lies. He uncovered a betrayal so deep, it shattered everything I knew. Listen to how one text unraveled a lifetime of secrets. Like, share, and let us know where you are listening from. The hospital discharge papers felt heavy in my hand, but my body felt even heavier. Fresh out of gallbladder surgery, all I wanted was my own bed. I pulled out my phone, fingers shaking slightly from the lingering anesthesia, and sent a text to Nate, my son. "Ready to go, honey. Feeling a bit rough." I expected a quick, "On my way, Mom," or a call. Instead, my phone buzzed with a message from Chloe, Nate's wife. "We can't keep dropping everything for you every time, Elle. Just call an Uber." The words hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred for a second. Every time? This was my first surgery in 20 years. And Nate? My son, my only child, was silent. No apology from him. "No, I'm sorry, Mom. Chloe didn't mean it like that." Just deafening silence. I slumped back in the wheelchair, feeling suddenly very small and utterly alone. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. My chest felt tight, a deeper pain than any incision. A nurse, bless her heart, wheeled me out to the curb. The brisk autumn air felt cold, but I barely noticed. I was still reeling from Chloe's brutal text. A yellow cab pulled up, and for a moment, I thought it was my Uber. But then a man, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, stepped out of a sleek black sedan that had silently glided to a stop behind the taxi. He was tall, with silver hair and kind, intelligent eyes. He walked directly to my wheelchair. "Mrs. Johnson?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. I nodded, confused. "Yes? My name is Arthur Sterling. I'm with Regional Southwest Financial. We need to talk." My stomach dropped. Financial? What could this be about? I was about to protest, to tell him I was just out of surgery, but he continued. "It concerns your son, Nathaniel Johnson, and your property." Arthur dismissed the cab with a wave of his hand and helped the nurse gently guide me into his luxurious car. The leather seats felt soft, almost too soft, a stark contrast to the hard hospital chairs and the even harder words from Chloe. As we drove away, Arthur wasted no time. "Mrs. Johnson," he began, his tone serious. "Your son, Nathaniel, has been claiming significant financial hardship for the past 2 years. He attributes this hardship directly to what he describes as your extensive medical expenses and progressive health issues." He paused, looking at me. "He paints a picture of you as a considerable financial burden." I stared at him, bewildered. Medical expenses? Progressive health issues? "I had my gallbladder out today, Mr. Sterling. That's my first significant medical event in decades, and I'm perfectly healthy for my age." A chill ran down my spine. Why would Nate say such things? Arthur's expression remained grim. "That's not all. 2 years ago you co-signed a mortgage for Mr. Johnson, correct?" "Yes," I said, remembering the stack of papers Nate had brought to my house. "He said he needed a character reference, a guarantor, for his mortgage. He said my good credit would help him get a better rate." I remember feeling proud, happy to help my son. He'd seemed so grateful. Arthur shook his head slowly. "Mrs. Johnson, you didn't sign as a character reference. You co-signed as a co-borrower. You are equally liable for the entire debt of $344,000. The air left my lungs. My mind reeled. $344,000? I was on the hook for Nate's mortgage? The betrayal was a fresh wound on top of the physical pain. But he said. "He lied, Mrs. Johnson," Arthur stated plainly. "He put you on the hook for everything." He paused, studying my face. "Forgive me, but I need to confirm something. What was your maiden name?" "Sullivan," I whispered, the name feeling distant, like a memory from another life. Arthur stiffened. His eyes widened, a flicker of something ancient and powerful passing through them. His calm composure cracked. He looked at me, really looked at me, with an intensity that made my heart pound. Elle. Sullivan? He breathed. Almost a question. My breath hitched. The way he said my maiden name, the way he looked at me, the familiarity in his eyes despite the passage of time. A name, long buried in my subconscious, surfaced. Bobby? I whispered, my voice barely audible. It was him. The boy I had loved, the man I thought had abandoned me 45 years ago. Bobby. My Bobby. Tears, finally, welled up in my eyes, blurring the elegant interior of his car. His own eyes glistened. Elle, he said, his voice thick with emotion, confirming it. We sat in stunned silence for a long moment, the weight of decades pressing down on us. Then, a torrent of words, questions, and fragmented memories began to pour out. My parents, I choked out. They told me you left. They said you just disappeared. They said you didn't love me. He shook his head, pain etched on his face. Mine too, Elle. They told me you'd married someone else, that you wanted me to leave you alone. They said you moved on. The truth, bitter and agonizing, slowly pieced itself together. Our parents, for reasons we couldn't yet fathom, had systematically lied to us, fabricating stories of abandonment and indifference, keeping us apart for nearly half a century. 45 years. A lifetime. Gone. The injustice was staggering, the loss immense. We spent emotional minutes just staring at each other, tears streaming, grappling with the magnitude of what had been stolen from us. But the present danger loomed. Arthur, my Bobby, eventually pulled himself together, his professional demeanor returning, though still softened by the shock of our reunion. We need to focus. Elle. Nate's fraud is extensive. He's 3 months behind on the mortgage payments. He's also submitted falsified medical records to the lender, claiming you have early-onset dementia, stating you're unable to manage your own affairs. Dementia? My son was claiming I had dementia? The sheer cruelty of it made me gasp. And, Arthur continued, his voice grim, he's been using the money you've been giving him, your weekly support payments, as proof of his expenses for your care. He's painted a picture of himself as a devoted son sacrificing everything for his ailing mother. He paused, looking at me with a profound sadness. He's turned your love into evidence of your incompetence. The words hit me harder than Chloe's text, harder than the betrayal of the mortgage. Nate had taken my unconditional love, my willingness to help, and twisted it into a weapon to destroy my reputation and steal my future. My own son, a new feeling began to stir within me, something hot and fierce, replacing the hurt and disbelief. It was a cold, hard anger. I looked at Arthur, my Bobby, through my tears. My voice was steady, resolute. Now, I said, we give him exactly what he's been asking for. The next morning, the lingering effects of surgery were gone, replaced by a cold, clear determination. Arthur had arranged for us to observe Nate from a small waiting room at Regional Southwest Financial. Through a one-way mirror, I watched my son, Nathaniel, in a conference room with a loan officer. He sat there, impeccably dressed, a picture of confident deception. He was spreading documents across the table, his hands gesturing expansively as he spoke. I couldn't hear his words, but I knew the story he was spinning. Arthur had already explained it. Nate was claiming I had progressive dementia and required round-the-clock supervision, making him financially strapped. I scoffed silently. Progressive dementia? Just yesterday, I had managed to hobble through a short yoga routine, then cooked a perfectly good breakfast for myself. Some dementia. My heart hardened even more. Are you ready, Elle? Arthur asked, his hand gently touching my arm. I took a deep breath. As I'll ever be, Bobby. Hearing him call me Elle, just Elle, felt like coming home after a long, cruel exile. He nodded, then opened the door to the conference room. Nate was in mid-sentence, a smug smile on his face, when the door swung open. His eyes, full of his usual self-assuredness, landed on Arthur first, then on me. The color drained from his face. The papers he had been holding fluttered from his suddenly limp fingers, scattering across the polished table. His jaw literally dropped. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, not his supposedly incapacitated mother. I walked in slowly, deliberately, Arthur just behind me. I had chosen a simple but elegant dress, my hair neatly styled. I looked perfectly composed, perfectly sane. I took the seat Arthur pulled out for me, directly opposite Nate. My son just stared, speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Oh, please," I said, my voice sweet, almost too sweet. "Don't let me interrupt." "Nathaniel, darling, please, continue your explanation of my progressive dementia. I'm utterly fascinated to hear more," Nate stammered. "Mom? What? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be resting." He glanced nervously at the loan officer, a young woman with a polite, but now very confused, expression. Arthur Sterling, ever the professional, stepped forward. He placed a folder full of my personal checks on the table. Each check was dated, endorsed by Nate, and clearly marked for mortgage payment. "Mr. Johnson," Arthur began, his voice devoid of emotion, "these are checks from your mother, Elle Johnson, for her contribution to her mortgage payments. Can you explain to me, and to this loan officer, how these specific payments suddenly transformed into medical expenses and evidence of financial hardship on your part?" Nate swallowed hard, his eyes darting between Arthur, the checks, and me. He tried to regain his composure. No, Arthur, you don't understand. I was protecting Mom. You know, from the stress of finances. She's been, not herself. I was just documenting her support, showing that I was carrying the burden of her care, because she needed it. He even managed a strained smile. I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. "Hardship caused by caring for me?" I asked, my voice still deceptively calm. "Is that what you were claiming, Nate? That I was such a burden that it caused you financial hardship?" The loan officer looked at Nate, then back at me, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. The pieces were starting to fit for her. Arthur didn't give Nate a chance to respond. He pulled out another set of documents. "And these, Mr. Johnson? These are detailed medical records you submitted to the bank. They claim Mrs. Johnson has been hospitalized 6 times in the last 2 years for dementia and mobility issues. They also state she requires full-time, professional care." Nate's face was chalk white now. "Those aren't falsified," he blurted out, a desperate edge to his voice. I was trying to make sure the bank understood my situation." "Oh, really?" I interjected, a cold fire in my eyes. "Funny, because yesterday morning, before my minor gallbladder surgery, I walked 3 miles, cooked a healthy breakfast, and spent the afternoon discussing the latest Booker Prize nominees with my book club. Just last week, I went on a solo hiking trip. Exactly which part of that sounds like someone who needs full-time care for dementia and has mobility issues, Nate?" He had no answer. He just sat there, deflating. Arthur continued, pressing the attack. "Furthermore, Mr. Johnson, you led your mother to believe she was signing on as a character reference for your mortgage. The truth is, you only qualified for this loan because Mrs. Johnson was a co-signer, not a mere guarantor. Her substantial assets and excellent credit score were essential for your approval." My breath hitched. I turned to Arthur, my voice rising, the calm finally cracking. "Are you telling me, Bobby, that I've been legally responsible for this debt? This entire $344,000 mortgage? All along?" Arthur nodded gravely. "Yes, Elle. You are equally liable." He then turned to Nate. "You are 3 months behind on payments. As a co-borrower, Elle Johnson is now on the hook for those arrears, and the entire remaining balance." He looked back at me. "If you, Elle, cannot pay, The bank will initiate foreclosure proceedings. They can also garnish your retirement accounts, your Social Security, and even seize your home. Nate finally spoke, his voice weak. Mom, please. This is just a misunderstanding. I can fix this. Arthur ignored him, his gaze fixed on Nate. And for you, Mr. Johnson, the consequences are far more severe. What you have done here constitutes federal offenses, bank fraud, falsification of documents, and elder financial abuse. Each carries significant prison sentences. Nate's confident swagger vanished completely, replaced by raw, unadulterated terror. His eyes, wide and frantic, locked onto mine. Mom, no, please, Mom. Don't let him do this. A powerful surge, a feeling I hadn't known in years, coursed through me. It wasn't just anger or hurt anymore. It was control. For the first time in a very long time, I held all the cards. I looked at my son, the boy I had loved and trusted, who had so callously betrayed me. Nathaniel, I said, my voice low and firm, your life is about to change dramatically. And this time, I'm the one making the decisions. The phone started ringing at precisely 6 a.m. It was Chloe, calling relentlessly, her name flashing across my screen. I let it ring a few times before finally picking up, taking a sip of the herbal tea Arthur had brought me before heading to work. I felt surprisingly well rested, the fury from yesterday fueling a new clarity. Elle! Oh, thank goodness you picked up. Chloe's voice was breathless, tinged with panic. You have to believe me. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. Nate. He meant well. He was trying to protect you. I took another slow sip of tea. A misunderstanding, Chloe? The words about my progressive dementia, the falsified medical records, the financial hardship you both created by using my money as yours. I heard it all. Chloe launched into a torrent of excuses. Nate's business has been struggling so much since the pandemic, and with my maternity leave, money has been so tight. He just wanted to make sure we could keep our home. For the kids. Her voice shifted, trying a different tactic. Think about Lily and Sam, Elle. Your grandchildren. Do you really want their father to face criminal charges? To go to prison? I could almost see her tears, the perfectly orchestrated performance. For years, I had fallen for it. For Nate's excuses, for Chloe's emotional blackmail. But now, it was different. I saw the strings. I also realized why I hadn't heard from Nate. He was probably still trying to process the fact that his incapacitated mother was standing right in front of him, fully aware and ready for battle. I bet Chloe had already whisked the children away, a smart move before the lawyers arrived. Funny thing about family, Chloe, I said, my voice calm, almost detached. It means honesty. It means respect. It means not using your mother as collateral for your criminal activities. And it certainly doesn't involve lying to her about a $500,000 debt. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Chloe, clearly, had expected me to crumble, to fall back into my old role of forgiving, understanding mother. But that Elle was gone. I have to go now, Chloe, I stated. Immediately, I called Arthur. Phase 1 complete, I announced, a grim satisfaction in my voice. Excellent, Arthur replied, his voice firm. We are ready for Phase 2. It's time to teach Nate what consequences truly look like, and perhaps even save his marriage, if Chloe is smart enough to cut ties with his schemes. Later that morning, Arthur drove me to Nate's house, the family home that I had unknowingly helped purchase and put on the line. It was a beautiful house, manicured lawn, a testament to the life Nate and Chloe had built, largely on my stolen credit and good intentions. I rang the doorbell. Chloe opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed, her face puffy. She had clearly been crying, or at least working hard to look like she had. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Nate appeared behind her, looking haggard, his usually slick hair disheveled. Mom, he exclaimed, a desperate plea in his voice. That banker, Arthur, he's trying to destroy our family. He's lying, trying to take everything from us. I met his gaze, unflinching. Nate, I corrected him, my voice flat. Arthur Sterling is trying to collect on a legitimate debt that you've defaulted on, while simultaneously committing egregious bank fraud and elder financial abuse. He's not destroying your family, Nate. You are. I then pulled out a manila folder Arthur had prepared. Inside were copies of the mortgage documents, highlighting the sections pertaining to co-borrower rights and responsibilities. As you know, I continued, holding up the folder, I am a co-borrower on this mortgage. That means I have an equal legal right to this property. It also means I have the right to protect my interests. My eyes scanned the spacious living room, the expensive furniture. Under the terms of our agreement with the bank, since you have defaulted, I, as the other co-borrower, have the right to assume the payments and take possession of the collateral property to protect my interests. Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. You can't do that. Her face was pale. Oh, but I can, Chloe, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. It wasn't a kind smile. I can assume the mortgage payments, effectively taking ownership of the house. And then you two will need to find somewhere else to live. Since Nate has apparently fallen on such hard times, and given his ongoing legal issues, I doubt it will be easy for you to secure another home loan. Nate's eyes flared with outrage. Mom, you can't throw us out of our home. This is our family home. Where are Lily and Sam going to live? Your home? I countered, raising an eyebrow. Is it your home, Nathaniel? Or is it the home I unknowingly co-signed for? The home you defrauded me into purchasing for you? The home that, according to you, was causing you so much financial hardship because you were burdened with my care? Chloe began to cry in earnest now. Real tears this time, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. She sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. But I was unmoved. I had seen this performance too many times. Too many carefully planned tears, too many pleas for sympathy. My heart remained as cold and hard as the stone it had become. Chloe continued to sob on the sofa, her face buried in her hands, while Nate stood frozen, utterly defeated. I let the silence hang in the air, allowing the weight of my words to sink in. They needed to understand the gravity of their situation. However, I began, breaking the silence, my voice cutting through Chloe's muffled cries. There is an alternative to foreclosure and criminal charges. Arthur, on behalf of the bank, is willing to negotiate. Nate looked up, a glimmer of desperate hope in his eyes. What do we have to do? Full financial restitution, I stated plainly. Not just the 3 months of missed mortgage payments, Nathaniel, but all the associated penalties, the bank's legal fees, and a sum for damages incurred due to the fraud. I paused for dramatic effect. The total comes to $67,000. Chloe lifted her head, her eyes wide with fresh despair. $67,000? We don't have that kind of money, Elle. You know Nate's business is barely breaking even. No, I agreed, my gaze unwavering. But I do. I could pay it. I could save you from federal prison. I could keep the house from going into foreclosure. I could make all of this disappear. A flicker of hope, raw and desperate, ignited in Nate's eyes, and even Chloe's sobbing quieted. They looked at me, clinging to my words, their minds racing with the possibility of escape. I then pulled another document from my folder. This one was a notarized rental agreement. If I pay off your debts and assume full ownership of this house, I explained, sliding the paper across the coffee table towards them, you can stay here. As my tenants, on a 1-year lease, paying market-rate rent. Chloe snatched the document, scanning it quickly. Her eyes widened again. This rent is higher than our mortgage payment, she exclaimed, her voice cracking. That's market rate for a house this size in this neighborhood, Chloe, I replied, shrugging slightly. You're welcome to find somewhere else. Of course, but with a foreclosure on your record and potential federal charges hanging over Nate's head, I doubt your options will be extensive. Nate, his shoulders slumped, asked, What happens if we can't make the rent? Then standard eviction procedures apply, I said, my voice utterly devoid of emotion. Just like with any other tenant. 30-day notice, then court proceedings if you don't vacate. Chloe stared at me, her mouth agape. You're blackmailing us, she accused, her voice rising to a shrill pitch. I raised an eyebrow. Blackmailing you? Chloe, I'm offering you a way out of federal prison, a way to keep a roof over your children's heads, and a way to avoid the utter financial ruin that Nate has brought upon you both. Call it what you like. I call it a choice. Then, I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a serious, almost menacing tone. And that's not all, Arthur Sterling uncovered in his investigation. Nathaniel, he also looked into your application for that business line of credit from last year. Nate visibly flinched. Chloe looked confused. Remember that loan, Nate? I pressed. The one where you claimed I was a business partner, contributing startup capital, and used my monthly mortgage assistance payments to you as proof of my investment? Chloe gasped, a small, choked sound. Oh God, she whispered, her eyes fixed on Nate, horror dawning on her face. 2 separate incidents of fraud, involving the same victim. I nodded slowly, letting the truth hang heavy in the air. Exactly. And Arthur has informed me that the prosecutor would view this as establishing a pattern of criminal behavior. That makes plea bargaining much, much more difficult. It shows premeditation. It shows a clear intent to defraud. Nate was trembling now, his face a mask of utter despair and fear. What do you want, Mom? He pleaded, his voice cracking. Just tell me what you want. I looked around the room, taking in the expensive furniture, the large flat-screen television, the framed family photos that lined the mantelpiece, many of them gifts from me over the years. This house, their entire lifestyle, had been built on a foundation of lies and my generosity. I want what I've always wanted, Nathaniel, I said, my voice calm but firm. I want to be treated with respect. I want honesty. And I want my family to stop seeing me as their personal bank account, as a means to an end for their own selfish desires. I picked up the rental agreement and held it out to Nate. If you sign this and agree to the terms, I will inform Arthur that I was a willing participant who simply misunderstood the arrangements, that I was fully aware of my co-borrower status, and that your claims of financial hardship were merely an unfortunate misunderstanding. That way, the criminal charges against you will disappear. Nate stared at the document, then at me, his hand shaking as he reached for it. Chloe was still crying, but silently now, watching him with wide, terrified eyes. The choice was clear: sign and become tenants in a house that was once theirs, or face federal prison and complete financial ruin. I stood up, adjusting the folder in my hand. The choice is yours, Nathaniel, but it is a choice you have made for yourself. And, Sarah, dear, I added, looking at Chloe, using her real name instead of the generic Chloe I usually called her. You made that choice too. You made that choice when you decided I was too much of a burden to pick up from the hospital yesterday. 3 days later, I sat across from Arthur at a quiet coffee shop, a satisfied sigh escaping my lips as I took a sip of my latte. Nate and Chloe had signed the rental agreement. The house, once theirs through deceit, was now legally mine. Arthur slid a folder across the table. Congratulations, Elle, he said, a warm smile in his eyes. You are now officially the proud owner of a new investment property. And Nate and Chloe are officially your tenants. A wry smile touched my lips. Hard to believe, isn't it? From unwitting co-borrower to satisfied landlord in less than a week. We talked for a while about the logistics, the legalities, and the sudden shift in my financial standing. It felt good. Better than good. It felt like justice. Then, a question that had been lingering in my mind since our shocking reunion finally spilled out. Bobby, I began, using the familiar name again. How did you know it was me that day at the hospital? My married name is Johnson, not Sullivan. How did you connect me to us? Arthur's gaze softened, a hint of ancient pain and profound relief in his eyes. Maple Street, Millfield, Ohio. He recited softly. Your address. I drove past that house every single night for months after my parents told me you'd married Victor. I memorized every detail, every window, every brick. just hoping to catch a glimpse of you, even from a distance." He shook his head, a ghost of a sad smile on his face. "When your maiden name, Sullivan, came up on Nate's mortgage application, and the address was on Maple Street, it was just too much of a coincidence. I had to investigate further. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. If Nate hadn't committed fraud," I mused, "our paths never would have crossed again." Arthur reached across the table, gently covering my hand with his. "Destiny finds a way, Elle. Even a twisted, circuitous way through deception and betrayal." We spent the next hour catching up on 45 years of lost time, carefully filling in the blanks of lives lived apart. He had gone to college, married a wonderful woman named Sarah, but they had divorced after 15 years. No children. His career in finance had soared, but his personal life, he admitted, had felt incomplete. I told him about Victor, a kind and stable man who had loved me deeply and who had passed away 5 years ago. I spoke of raising Nate and his sister, Isabel, who had moved across the country years ago and with whom I had a much healthier, if more distant, relationship. A pang of guilt hit me as I spoke of Nate. "I suppose," I confessed, my voice quiet, "I created this situation as much as he did. I enabled him. Bobby, I always gave him money, always bailed him out, always believed his excuses. I was so desperate for his love, for him to stay close, that I let him walk all over me." Arthur squeezed my hand firmly. "No, Elle. Don't you dare blame yourself for his choices. You loved your son. You were a mother who gave, perhaps too generously, but out of genuine affection. He chose to exploit that love. There's a fundamental difference between a loving parent and a calculating con artist. You are not responsible for his actions, only for your own." His words were a balm to a wound I hadn't realized was still so raw. Just then, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a text message from Nate. "Mom, can we talk? I've been thinking about everything you said, and I want to make this right." I showed the message to Arthur. He raised an eyebrow. 3 days. It took him 3 days to realize federal prison isn't appealing. Is it genuine remorse, Elle, or just another manipulation? He leaned back in his chair, watching me thoughtfully. "Sometimes, a crisis like this forces growth, makes them see the errors of their ways, or sometimes they just get better at lying. Are you ready to find out?" Arthur prompted, his gaze searching mine. I looked at Nate's text again, then at Arthur. The anger was still there, but beneath it, a tiny flicker of hope, a mother's persistent, stubborn hope. I still wanted my son back, not the manipulating, selfish version, but the kind boy I remembered. Was it possible? Could this truly be a turning point? I picked up my phone. "Come to my apartment tomorrow at 7 p.m. I typed, my fingers steady. "Come alone. We'll talk." The doorbell chimed at exactly 7 p.m. My heart pounded a little faster than usual. I opened the door to find Nate standing there, looking smaller, more subdued than I had ever seen him. He was dressed simply, not in his usual expensive suits, and his usually slicked-back hair was a little messy. He held a manila envelope clutched tightly in his hands. The confident, entitled mask he usually wore was gone, replaced by an expression of genuine remorse, a look I hadn't seen on his face since he was a frightened little boy. "Mom," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for seeing me." I stepped aside, letting him in. He sat on the edge of my sofa, fidgeting slightly. The comfortable silence of my apartment felt heavy with unspoken words. Finally, he took a deep breath. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For everything. I lied to the bank. I forged those records. I risked your security, your home, your entire future. All of it. I did it because I was afraid of failing, afraid of not being able to provide, afraid of admitting to Chloe, and to myself, that I couldn't give her the life I'd promised." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine, raw and vulnerable. "But that's no excuse. What I did was wrong, cruel, and I put you through so much. He pushed the manila envelope across the coffee table towards me. This is for you. Full restitution. I opened it. Inside was a cashier's check for $67,000. I sold my business, Mom, he explained, his voice thick with emotion. At a loss, but it was the only way I could get the money quickly enough. I wanted to make this right. Truly right. Before anything else. He continued. Chloe and we're in marriage counseling. She's really trying. And I'm seeing a counselor too, for my issues with financial dishonesty and my need to always present this perfect image. I know it's a long road, Mom, but I want to change. I really do. I looked at the check, then at my son. The money was a symbol, not just of his debt, but of his commitment to change. It was a tangible sign of accountability. The rental agreement stands. Nate, I said, my voice firm but softer than it had been in days. That's not changing, but I am willing to discuss a path back to family. Real family. One built on honesty, mutual respect, and trust. It won't be easy, and it won't be fast, but I'm willing to try if you are truly serious about earning it. Nate nodded, tears welling in his eyes. I am, Mom. More than anything. 6 months later, my apartment buzzed with laughter and the delicious aroma of roasted turkey. It was Thanksgiving, and I was hosting. Nate and Chloe were there, not as my demanding family, but as my respectful tenants. Their rent always paid on time, sometimes even a few days early. Chloe had developed a newfound backbone, standing up for herself and sometimes even gently challenging Nate, which I secretly admired. Her warmth felt genuine now, no longer a performance. She respected me, I realized, ever since I had stopped covering Nate's lies. Arthur was also there, effortlessly charming Lily and Sam, my grandchildren, with stories and riddles. He had moved into a beautiful house just a few blocks from mine, and our relationship had blossomed into something deep and comfortable, filled with the joy of rediscovering a love thought lost. After dinner, as the kids were playing in the living room, Nate approached me. Mom, he said, handing me a small wrapped envelope. This is an early Christmas present. For you. Inside, I found another document. A new purchase agreement for the house. It was a formal offer to buy the house from me at fair market value, complete with a substantial down payment. The accompanying letter explained that the down payment represented 2 years of faithful rent payments, plus additional savings. I want to earn this house back, Mom, Nate explained, his eyes earnest. Not just for Chloe and me, but to show Lily and Sam that when you make a mistake, you own it, you work hard, and you keep your word. My heart swelled. It was the most selfless, responsible thing I had ever seen my son do. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, and Arthur and I were clearing the last of the dishes, he turned to me. The kitchen was warm, filled with the lingering scent of pumpkin pie. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. He got down on one knee, his kind eyes twinkling with love and a lifetime of unspoken dreams. Dorothy Sullivan Parker, he said, using my full maiden name, the name I had as a girl, the girl he fell in love with all those years ago. I know some things are worth waiting for. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down my face, tears of joy, of overwhelming gratitude. Yes, Bobby, I whispered, barely able to speak. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, a beautiful sapphire surrounded by diamonds. I've already put in for early retirement, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I want to travel, Elle, see the world with you. After 45 years, I don't intend to waste another single day. As I looked at Arthur, my Bobby, my rediscovered love, and thought of the changes in Nate, the growth in Chloe, and the beautiful, respectful family we were slowly rebuilding, I understood. The best revenge wasn't revenge at all. It wasn't about punishing them, but about reclaiming my self-worth, demanding respect, and embracing the love I thought I'd lost forever. The girl who waited at the train station, heart shattered by a lie, finally got her happy ending, just 45 years later.